Go.
Welcome to the Georgia Game Developers Association Neighborhood Spotlight. I'm your host, Bob Carter, and with me this evening, very special guest, George Skleres. Now, George, after that trailer, I think we need to go ahead and jump right into Wiener Takes All.
Yeah. Yeah.
How long did it take you to come up with this game?
The game concept came up with it really quick. Development of the game took a lot longer.
Yes.
So the game concept, I'm an openly gay game developer. I was going to a gay game developer meetup in a car with my friend in West Hollywood, in LA. And I'm not fond of West Hollywood personally, and the scene is a little too superficial for me, which that's really negative. There's other good things about it.
Okay.
But and that was literally what I said is, I don't like it because it's a bunch of superficial queens trying to get each other's wieners, which is pretty rude to say, but when you're with friends, contextually
Right.
you can say whatever. And it just was a light bulb in my head. This is a perfect chance for me to make a game that symbolizes my experiences with this.
Okay.
What it feels like.
To go to a sausage fest and
Well-
then try to find the best wiener.
That's what it feels like sometimes. It really does. It feels like that's what's expected of you. So there's kind of some social context in this too. It's kind of slamming society.
Yes.
They have all of those apps now, like the Tinders and the Grinders. And
Right,
things. So
right.
it's
Now, you came up with this game while you were in LA,
Yes.
working for Riot Games.
correct. Now I wasn't. This was not a game for Riot.
Right,
Games.
obviously.
This is obviously a side project.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really into board games. When I was at Riot, I ran their board game group, and I love playing board games all the time, all kinds of stuff. And
Same here.
So yeah, making board games is one of my biggest passions now.
Very cool. And in addition to that, based on your background, I mean, we're going to talk about your entire background,
Okay.
Because that's what we do with the Georgia Game Developers Association. We love to see everyone's development in terms of personal development, because hopefully you can inspire someone, a younger, aspiring game developer, to say, I can make a game. And of course, that's what we're trying to do, is build a community here in
Yeah.
Georgia. Now, you got your start in kids games.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit about that.
When I went to school for game design, and
Okay. Where'd you go?
It's called Collins College down in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
And during my degree, I wanted to do more games. Like I wanted to do more than just learn about making games. I wanted to make games.
Okay.
And so I taught myself how to program Flash because it was big at the time when I
Right.
was in school.
Okay.
And then just through persistence and asking as many people as I can I help? Can I help? Can I help? All the time. Eventually, someone knew someone who needed a Flash programmer in an emergency situation to finish some stuff. So I offered to do it, and it might not have been the best pay, but
Right.
it was experience, and
Yes.
then I did a good job with it. And as a result, the same person came back and asked me to do more kids game stuff,
Okay.
and then
Can we talk about who the company was that hired you to get your start in the industry? Or do you
They
not
were well, they were working at the time for a couple of other people,
Okay.
and so I don't know if the company's still around or not, but it's
Okay.
eventually they got a contract with Nick Jr. and next thing I knew,
All right.
I was serving as a game designer and then a programmer as well on a Nick Jr. game which is pretty cool. It's Dora
That's
the
very
Explorer,
cool.
you know.
Oh, totally.
I know
I played Dora the Explorer.
it's
I've got girls, 65. So again, I
so-
played Dora the Explorer.
So
All
yeah,
right.
here I am, fresh out of school, thinking I'm desperately trying to get any kind of job I can
Right.
in the game industry, and this is freelance work. Keep in mind, so it's not a regular
Okay.
game industry job, but
And this was in Arizona? Or is this
yes,
in California?
correct. Well, actually, it happened when I was here in Atlanta because
Really?
after I finished school, I moved to Atlanta.
Very nice.
It was just serendipitous that I did, but one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Perfect.
Yeah,
And that kind of led to you coming back to Atlanta, right?
correct. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I was in LA from 2010 to 2016. I moved there to work for Riot. Awesome experience. Riot is an amazing company.
What all did you do with Riot?
I worked on League of Legends.
Really?
Yeah, so
All right.
they needed a UI programmer and their UI at that time was in scale form using Flash.
Okay.
And so I was at the Game Developers Conference. I volunteer there every year. By the way, side note, if you get a chance, volunteer at the Game Developers Conference. Become a conference associate. It's a really good experience. And you should do the same thing with SiegeCon. Siege is also a really important experience. All of these things, do as much as you can to volunteer everywhere.
Yes.
So
because, of course, you're going to meet people that are in your industry, people who can help you get jobs, connect with people that you enjoy hanging out with and spending time with and sweating with. And obviously, they're going to help you down the road, which is what happened for you.
So with the conference associates, the volunteers there, we decided to do a League of Legends tournament amongst ourselves.
Nice.
And I contacted Riot at the time. I wasn't working for them at the time.
Okay.
I contacted them, asking them if they had any prizes for the tournament. And they went above and beyond. They sent 12 people with T-shirts and swag of all kinds.
Oh, wow.
And so that's where I met them. They found out that I do programming for Flash, and they said, we really need someone, and they were impressed by the fact that I put together a like 40-person tournament with a budget of $0.
Yes, that is impressive.
It was pretty cool. I had and so I interviewed, and they said yes, which was awesome. So there I was, pack my bags, go to California.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was.
Now, what all did you do for Riot while you were there for 6 years? That's a long time, especially in gamer years. I mean, in programmer years.
Right. I started as a UI programmer, primarily in Flash. They do a lot of training inside of Riot. So you're encouraged to learn new things, and you're encouraged to join teams where you're going to be practicing skills that aren't necessarily your primary skills so that you can grow as a developer as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so I started learning more C++. I started learning more of all kinds of stuff. We had several different languages that we were doing. And then I also started practicing a lot of game design there. I've always been a game designer. I think most game designers kind of know that they're game designers just instinctually.
Yes.
And everyone to a degree is a game designer, but when you happen to have a pretty good knack for it, it's kind of like music. Everyone can do some music, but some people are just more, it just comes easier to them.
Yes.
It's still 90% perspiration, 10% inspiration.
Yes.
But so I started doing more and more game design, and then around 3 or 4 years in, I transitioned to the research and development department. So
R&D for Riot Games.
Yeah.
Can you tell us anything that you might have worked on that you could talk about now, or
I cannot? No, there's nothing.
Yeah,
I'm not going to do that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I had to ask.
No, but I switched over to be more of a technical game designer role.
Okay.
So that they have the role there. It's called different things in different places. I know some places call them designer programmers. And it basically merges. You still have code access and you're contributing to the code base, but you're also participating with the game designers.
Yes.
So that's what I did for a long time, and then eventually we hit a transition point in one of the projects. I'm sure everyone knows R&D has lots of bumps and jumps along the way.
Right.
And all of my family is on the East Coast, and I was really missing my family, and I decided
come back to Atlanta.
Yeah, this is the perfect time for me to make a good life change.
Sure. And you chose Atlanta.
I did. Yes.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, actually, let's talk a little bit about that. You decided to come to Atlanta for what? The weather?
Not quite.
Right.
I mean, from LA.
Yeah, exactly.
If there's one good thing that's awesome about LA, you cannot beat the weather.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about why you decided to come to Atlanta, because that's something that we try to tell people that until they've come to Atlanta, they just have no idea how great it can be here.
Atlanta has everything that I love about cities and very few of the things that I hate about cities. So I'm a city person.
Okay.
My parents live kind of not quite in the country, but we grew up in a smaller town / city.
Where are you from?
So Bel Air, Maryland.
Okay. It's
gotten a lot bigger. It's northeast of Baltimore, basically.
Gotcha.
And
kind of near Annapolis.
No, that's south of Baltimore.
Okay.
So yeah, it's northeast. It's closer to Delaware and Pennsylvania.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's a lot of cows and things.
Okay.
But
Who knew?
and it's pretty boring. And honestly, just growing up gay as well, cities tend to be better for gay people. Mm-hmm. So that was another.
Atlanta.
Yeah.
Number one gay. It's the gay capital of North America. I think only Toronto has a larger population. So yeah, Atlanta's definitely the place.
It's
congratulations.
Yeah, that's not my main factor for it, but it's definitely plays a role. I mean, you want to be somewhere where you don't have to worry about
your safety.
Exactly. And so I had such a huge pool of friends from Atlanta before. There's something to be said about Southern hospitality where
Absolutely, it's true. It's a real thing.
you can go to a bar in Atlanta alone and walk out with 10 friends.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So I made a ton of friends. The gaming scene, surprisingly, so there's a term, gamers, G-A-Y-M-E-R.
Right.
It's interesting. It's an interesting dual identity that we should talk about that later too.
Okay.
But there's a huge gaming community here.
Okay.
I don't want to stress that too much, but it's
Well, it makes sense. I mean, it is Atlanta, and obviously, I mean, we're a gaming city, so
yes.
And then we're a gaming city. That's a good pun. I like that. I'll remember that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously the lifestyle was good for you, and then the opportunities. Well, let's talk about opportunities. So you came here, and you decided to open up your own gaming studio?
I did from after leaving Riot. Yeah.
Right.
I'm working primarily freelance now on my own projects as well as some other projects. I've done a good bit of work on board games. That's been my focus currently.
Nice.
I'm happy to do digital work too, but I've become obsessed in the last couple of years with board games. So just finding all those different holy grails that game designers are going after within board games is something that's really interesting to me.
Okay.
The work that I've been doing freelance, because you got to pay the bills too.
That's right. Do the things you have to do so you can do the things you want to do.
Exactly.
Like your game.
Yeah.
Okay, so Fruitstrike, I think?
Fruitstrike Games, yeah.
Okay, where'd the name come from?
That's my online handle. I just figured I would
Of course,
pick it.
it's your online handle. Perfect.
I tend to skew pretty heavily on the inappropriate side, and I don't take anything seriously, and I'm pretty big on owning things so that people can't have power over you. And so that's
yes.
Oh yes. Do you have the logo?
Yes. Perfect.
Ta-da! Just reach up and grab. Yeah.
Oh, wait, right there.
Oh, my bad.
Oh, no, too high. It's right there. Okay, so you started Fruitstrike, and you were just inspired to say it's going to be about wieners.
Yeah, well, this is one of many game prototypes that I have.
Right.
So this is the one that's the farthest forward in the process, and that's because it's the easiest to manufacture. It's the one that's definitely the most polished from a game rule perspective. I have another one as well, but it doesn't have as catchy of a theme. This, the board game market is pretty saturated at this point with all kinds of party games and everything else. So you really need to have something that people
catches
can
people's attention.
I was going to say that people can grasp onto, but yes.
And grab onto it with both hands.
Yep. And so, the game is basically I guess I should. Well, you saw the commercial already, I'm assuming, but just to give a brief overview.
Yeah, please do.
As the players, you are at a sausage festival, and you are competing with each other to flirt with these scrumptious men over here, so that you can get their wieners, because you're at a sausage festival, right?
Of course, you're at a sausage
Exactly.
fest. That's really fun.
And so you're going to be rolling some dice to flirt with guys. There's a hidden information element to it, so you're going to have to make strategic decisions about who you're going to peek at. Do you peek at the guys to see if it's easy, or do you peek at the wieners to see if they're even worth it to begin with? And eventually, once there are no wieners left to grab, the game is over.
Okay, well, I tell you what, I learned by doing, so let's go ahead and play.
Sure. Okay, we can try it out. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get a trait.
Okay.
And so go ahead and pick one random of each of these cards.
Each of the colors?
Yeah.
Okay, so size.
Yeah.
Size matters. What? I'm heavy. Oh,
You're heavy.
yeah.
Yeah. So in this game,
All right.
one thing that I really wanted to
It's big boned.
exactly.
My feature. What's my best feature? I'm pierced. Where?
Anywhere you want.
Okay.
You get to decide.
I'm heavy and I'm pierced. And I am tall. Yes, I am tall. Yes. And I am Latino. Hello, I am Latino. I am Latino. I am tall. I am pierced. And I am heavy.
And I will be athletic.
Oh, of course.
Definitely accurate.
Yeah, you rigged these. You rigged the cards.
Bald.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Very hairy.
Okay.
And I'm white.
All right.
So these traits, something I want to mention is that these traits were deliberately selected to only be physical attributes, because it's something that I think is indicative of how, not to be, social.
Shallow and superficial?
Right, exactly. But that's how society feels sometimes.
Okay.
And it also provides a really comedic backdrop for it.
Okay, I can see that.
But another important thing to note is that every single trait in the game mathematically has an identical chance of success. So I wanted to make sure that people who play the game can have any combination of traits, which, whether or not society or the individuals playing the game feel that they're traits that are positive or negative, they all have the same chance, so everyone feels included.
Okay, makes sense.
Cool, and now we get to the inappropriate part.
All right, let's do it.
So what we'll do is we will put a buffet line of guys down. So, and then, of course, each guy has a wiener.
Okay.
So now on your turn, I'll take my turn first. So
Yes.
I'm going to peek at a card.
Okay.
And you only get to peek at one card.
Really?
So, for example, I'll peek at this guy.
Okay.
Now, this guy, I'll show the camera. This guy has a trait up here that, is that close enough to see? It says, I'll just say it out loud. It says salt and pepper. So if my character was salt and pepper, I'd have an easier roll than if my character weren't. So then I'm going to pick who I'm going to flirt with. Since I peeked at this guy and he is not matching my trait, so he would be more fond of me if I were salt and pepper.
Okay.
I'll pick someone else. I roll the dice to flirt. I got an
11.
11. That's 11. A really good roll. I'm cheating. And then here I would match the trait. So this
if you were black or if you were other? Oh no.
So others is what I have to roll because I'm not black.
Okay.
So I got the wiener. So
because you rolled an 11,
correct.
So you beat the 10.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So it's just simple comparison. And then once that's out, you put a new guy out. And now it would be your turn.
Okay. Let's see what kind of guy
Only
I can roll.
Only a game designer could roll like that.
I'm not terribly impressed, by the way.
No.
All right, so I get to peek first. Oh, yeah.
I shouldn't peek.
Oh, okay. Well, he likes big booties and he cannot lie. I don't have a big booty because I'm pierced, so that would be my feature, right?
So yeah, so
in this case, I'll try the new one. Oh wait, so I just have to flip it?
Yep, and then roll the dice.
Let's say I rolled a 9.
Okay, so you failed at this one.
Gotcha, so that goes
now,
right back there.
Actually, it stays face up. So this is how, to make sure that there's not going to be an endless amount of rolling in the game, the first time if roll fails, the guy flips up. The second time a roll fails, the wiener flips up and everyone gets to see it.
Okay.
And then...
you get to see his wiener?
Yep, it's, I guess, a little bit of exhibitionism in it.
Okay.
But then the last roll, if another roll fails, he leaves, tired of being flirted with, nobody gets the wiener. And that's the travesty. So eventually you're going to run out of cards. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Unless, you're drinking, then it probably takes 20 to 25 minutes.
Sure, of course, because everybody's going to forget the rules and make them up as they go along. And of course, you can just change it whenever you're rolling and drinking. That makes sense. All right, so your turn?
Sure.
Okay.
We're
going to play to win.
This guy favors my trait, so I'm going to peek at his wiener, and I'm going to go for it. Because
you checked out his package.
It was, that's a lot of meat.
Okay.
A question in chat says, what are the drinking game rules?
So the drinking game rules are anything you want. When we play it, we tend to play with, one of two different ways. Either every time you get a wiener, you have to take a drink, and it has to be a pretty big drink, so that you become worse and worse as you play the game, which it's like it's like the blue shell from Mario Kart. You get worse at the game so other people can come back and get some inches. But another way to play is at the end of the game, you have to take a number of shots equal to your victory score in inches.
That one says tall.
Oh, so you're going to go for it, huh?
I'm for it. All right, so I put it right there, and then I roll for it. Oh, I didn't make it.
That's okay, though, because you can try again next time. Because you are tall, and so you have a better roll for him.
I have a better chance of getting him.
Yeah, it's not to my advantage to roll for this guy. I'm going to try for someone else.
Try for the others.
Because in this game, one thing that I didn't tell you is the final score is whatever the biggest wiener you got, plus 1 inch for every other wiener, regardless of its size.
Okay.
So quantity and quality matter. They're both really important.
All right.
So
I can see this game doing really well here in Atlanta. I can see this doing really well, obviously with the gay community.
Yes.
But also like with the bachelorette parties.
Absolutely.
And I mean, like any kind of like women's party where they're doing like all the products and the fun toys and adult parties. You know what I mean? Like an adult toy party. And again, Atlanta has a huge population of adventurous people. So I can see this doing really well. What was your experience like in that aspect. So you came up with the game,
Yeah.
and then what happens? You've got this amazing game. What do you do next?
So I decided to launch it on Kickstarter.
Okay.
I thought it would be difficult to find a publisher who wanted to take this on because the content of the game is not what typical board game publishers would do, whereas companies who might want to publish this game typically don't do board games. Companies who are in those industries wouldn't typically do board games. So I said, okay, let's self-publish this and see how it goes.
But this is a cool game, and it's graphically, it's really, it's a beautiful game. Why wouldn't you give it to, Exploding Kittens or Cards Against Humanity or some of these, irreverent games?
I did contact Cards Against Humanities, but they turned down the opportunity, and it probably had to do with timing. So I am not a business person, and that is something that I am learning very quickly, how little I know about business. So as an example, they were in production for, I think, the recent expansion that they did.
Right.
And
so that would have been their entire focus, of course.
Yeah, they were turning down opportunities. Or they didn't like the product. I'm not sure, 100%. I got
product.
It relatively...
Again, I'm not gay, and I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious. So this is I can see this being a good game, a successful game, especially here in Atlanta. So, so what was that next process like? Because again, the things that you're experiencing, that's the stuff that we need to know about and teach others with the GGDA. So this is very helpful. What happened?
So I launched the Kickstarter back in November, made quite a few mistakes, and we can go through what those were, but ultimately what happened was the Kickstarter was on a trajectory that was pretty much guaranteed failure.
Okay.
And that's okay. Like, a lot of Kickstarters will fail, and then you start them back up.
Yes.
So I took some lessons that I learned from it. We picked bad launch days. We picked a bad launch image. So, for example, I picked this image right here on the back of the card as my launch image because I wasn't sure whether or not having something more risque would get flagged. And that was a mistake. I was a little too conservative with something that should be
flamboyant.
There.
Your commercial is hilarious. So right away, the commercial is funny. It gets people's attention. But I guess you need that graphic image to kind of, the graphic. Not to be graphic, but the graphic, the image. Yes, you need the logo to catch somebody's attention.
That's it. One of the easiest thing ever for this game was writing the script and writing the Kickstarter text because the jokes are just
they don't stop coming.
A million jokes.
And they keep coming from every direction. All right, so you did the Kickstarter, and what else did you try to do?
For the Kickstarter, the way that we failed basically.
No, the way you learned.
Or the way that
learned.
So that's something actually I would like to make a statement on. I don't like that a lot of times people have an aversion to failure because failure is the best teacher that you can have.
Yes.
If you're succeeding at everything, you're probably not learning stuff, and failing isn't a reason to stop. And that's something that I think is really important, especially if you're going into the game industry.
Sure.
Failure just abounds everywhere in the game industry.
Absolutely.
Projects get canceled or changed,
yes.
or things that you're trying to do, deadlines slip.
Yes.
And it's something you, of course, always want to strive for success.
Yes.
But you should think of failure always as a chance to fix it and learn and move on.
Yes.
And not be embarrassed or ashamed of your failure.
Yes, that is huge. Wasn't it Edison who failed, 100 times to create the light bulb? And then it was like 102 or 103, he finally made it. And of course, Jimmy Neutron, right? I mean, that's the lesson from Jimmy Neutron. It's about our failures. We learn from our failures so that we can succeed.
Right.
And again, nobody remembers how many times you failed unless you just stop trying.
Right,
so that
exactly.
is fantastic to hear you say that and reaffirm that message for everybody that's watching and listening right now. All right, so what are the lessons that you learned that you're going to do differently when you release this game?
Right. So the launch day, the launch time, the launch image,
what does
all
that
those
mean, like
things.
the launch day?
So we picked a Friday, and apparently Friday is a terrible idea to pick when launching a Kickstarter. People are getting out of work, and
right, so
we
they're not
thought
paying attention
incorrectly that they're out of work now. They can find fun things to do. No, that's the worst. It's probably the worst idea. And so we're doing more research on things like Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays. I think Wednesday is actually not a good day, but I know Tuesday is a particularly good day for launching.
Okay.
So that's just one example. And obviously that's not going to make or break a campaign. Our biggest problem was we relied too heavily on word of mouth to be the vehicle that would advertise for us.
Okay.
Instead of doing a lot more research ahead of time, getting more prototype copies created, send them to bloggers, YouTubers, board game enthusiasts.
People that would talk about it.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think if we had done that, we would have seen success in our campaign potentially. But there was one more roadblock that we did, which was we created a campaign goal, funding goal, that was accounting for a worst case scenario. So it was much higher than it probably should have been.
Oh,
We
okay.
underestimated what people would be willing to pledge for this product, thinking, this would get X dollars. But in reality, the average pledge from the people we got was much higher than that, almost 50% more.
Oh, that's great.
So that allowed us, with that knowledge now, we were able to go back and find a different manufacturer that could do smaller print runs, but is more expensive.
Okay,
And
so for better quality.
Well, actually, just so it's same quality probably, but
Okay, so it would be
we
good
want
quality.
high quality no matter
Yes,
what.
yes.
But with the other manufacturer, we needed to get X amount of copies sold to be able to get pricing that would be
Right.
affordable.
Okay.
With this, since we now know that the affordable pricing can be a little bit higher, we can use our other manufacturer who charges more upfront, but the people who really want the game will get it, and then it gets it out there. And once it's out
Right.
there in their hands,
Right. And of course, they're going to start playing it, and then
Right.
they're going to. That's the best way, because once people play it, they have an idea of what it's about, and they'll buy it themselves.
correct.
Okay.
So those are a bunch of the mistakes that we made. I do still feel like this product is going to be successful.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fun game. Speaking of, it's your turn, so let's go ahead and play. But
Okay.
thank you very much for sharing that with us
Yeah.
while we're doing this. So this is great.
So, I already peeked at him. I'm peeking at something
Okay.
else. Actually, see, this is the rule.
Yeah.
I'm trying to cheat right now.
Yeah, cheater.
In drinking games, we're usually lax about that, but I'm not drunk right now. So I'll roll for someone else. So now I'm crushing it.
Wow.
These dice
Seriously,
are loaded for
no
me.
kidding, man.
So I got that one too.
right.
So why don't we go through these two guys and then we
All right, and then we'll finish it up.
Yeah.
All right. So
you've got to.
So now I'm going to peek at this, or I just have to just go ahead and roll for it, because I'm going to try to just get
You
it.
can peek at a wiener. Yeah.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right. I can peek at a wiener. I can
It
take
never
out the
gets old.
package.
Nice!
Yes!
You nailed it.
11. Nailed him. And I got a sausage. All right, what do I do with this?
This is why I love this game.
That's a funny, obviously the jokes keep flying.
It puts people into, like, it's a great icebreaker, and
Yes, it is.
it puts people into a situation where contextually, even if they're in a social situation that feels awkward or difficult,
Yes.
they can break out.
Yes.
And it's pretty immature humor sometimes.
It is, and that's really funny. And again, we've all been at a sausage fest, so especially with a bunch of gamers and developers.
I'm not complaining.
Every game developer, anytime they go to a convention, it's a sausage fest. So this is really funny. Which, speaking of the fact that if you go to a game developer's sausage fest convention, let's talk about getting more women involved in game development as well, right? We need to talk about diversity in game development.
Sure, yeah.
What can we do?
This is a topic that I'm really, really passionate about. So diversity in gaming, I like to talk about diversity in gaming from 3 different directions.
Okay.
So the first important thing is the game industry itself. Diversity in the game industry. The second is going to be diversity in game communities, so people playing games. And then the third is game content. And the 3 of them together kind of form the, I guess you could say, the attack plan for making games for everyone.
Okay.
Basically, if you don't have a team that is capable of understanding and having empathy for diversity, it's going to be really difficult for them. It's not impossible, but it's going to be much more difficult for them to create content and support communities that are equally diverse. Now, this isn't to say that you should hire people just for the checkbox of I have this kind of person and that kind of person, but hiring people with the mindset that I want to make sure that this person is thinking about these things, regardless of who they are. And then also making sure that your workplace is an attractive place for people of diverse backgrounds. So I can say, speaking as someone who's openly gay in the game industry, I didn't really have that much trouble. So I know that there were a couple of times in my past where I worked for some companies where I wasn't sure whether I could come out or not, but then when I did, they were supportive. So it was a little iffy for me, but on the whole, I'd say everything's been supportive. I know Riot was,
amazing. Yeah,
it was amazing.
They're a great company.
It didn't matter at all. It factored, none of that factored into the equation at all. But I will say that in every company that I've worked at, I think it is probably harder to be female and a game developer than it is to be gay. And I can't necessarily say that everywhere in real life.
Yes.
Or real life, as if it's fake. We're speaking gamer terms here.
Yeah, but in terms of being a female and being in the industry, being in the community, do you think that might start from just being a player and being a decent person?
Yeah, so player behavior, it's really interesting. Most people who play games are very tolerant, and they're very nice, and they're very normal people. And we've done, I still say we as if I'm working at Riot still, but when I was at Riot, a lot of the research that they did was into player behavior. And there's talks that you can find on YouTube and other places for
it. Well, I'm going to add on to that because you said most people that play games are very nice, very decent, very great people until they PvP. I think we need to talk about that.
Sure. So that's an interesting topic. So when people get into situations where they are in a high stress, high competitive environment, even then, still most of the time, they are considerate, good, normal people.
Really?
Yes.
You did the research on this.
But what happens is, let's say one person who would normally otherwise just be a nice person and, oh, that was a bad move on my part, or, oh, it's okay, don't worry, you made a mistake, we'll still get them. They might have had a bad day. Maybe their boss yelled at them. Maybe they had a fight with their significant other. Maybe they, anything could have happened.
They take that out on these anonymous people, and they're just rude and terrible trolls.
But then there's
my stereotype.
There's a difference between a troll and someone who's a good person who simply made a mistake.
Who's having a bad day.
I mean, I think all of us in outside of gaming, we've all yelled at or made mistakes in saying things to people we love.
Yes.
Let alone people we don't even know.
Yes.
And so when that happens, because it's an anonymous curtain between the computer and your team, it's easy to slip and just accidentally say something. And then what happens is a snowball effect. It just triggers someone else to say something back. Then someone else, and next thing you know, the entire team, sometimes on both sides, is just hurling insults at each other, and it just becomes a crap show, which otherwise could have been avoided just from one simple change. And now there's a very, very small percentage, an incredibly small percentage of people who are dedicated trolls. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
That exists, and those are the kind of people who you should do everything you can to ban them from your games and keep them banned.
Yes.
But the majority of people respond extremely well to simply reminding them and showing them evidence of their behavior. You say, here's a log where you said, comment X, which was against the rules because it's, racist or,
rude.
Or even just rude. Yeah.
Yes.
There's any number of things like that. We understand people make mistakes. Try it again.
No kidding, and just put a positive spin on it.
Exactly, because
it changes their behavior. That's great.
Would you want to be fired on a first offense from a job?
No, I would not. So,
exactly.
Great point.
People respond really well when they're showed what their behavior is in a calmer state of mind.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe if it went in their face right then in the moment, it's probably not going to work.
So again, to reinforce positive habits. Congratulate people, right?
Yes.
GG, good game.
Absolutely.
Always try to be positive. Always try to highlight their strength and their participation. And then when you're going to showcase somebody's negative behavior, do it with the log and then ask them to change.
Privately,
right? And then in a calm fashion.
Right. You never want to shame people.
Correct.
And as players, we can also make huge differences just by simply saying something positive. A lot of time it's really easy to sit back and simply accept the status quo and just not say anything. But if someone on your team makes a mistake and someone else on your team says, oh, why would you do, tactic X when you knew it would fail miserably, or stupid noob, or something like that.
Yes.
Just saying something simple like, it's okay, you made a mistake, let's try and recover as best we can. It doesn't take that much to do something like that, and the benefit that comes out of it is huge. Positive behavior in games has the same exact ripple effect as negative behavior in games does, and so you can very quickly, with a few small efforts, turn the entire experience into a wonderful time. Even when you're losing, you can turn it into fun.
Yeah. I like that. Like right now, I'm losing this game.
You probably have lost the game.
Yes, because you got all the wieners.
You only need one big.
You're better at it.
You only need one big.
Okay, so what do we compare?
Yeah. Okay. So I got 9.5 plus 2 is 11.5. Do you have the 12er? No.
No, I got 7.5.
I just want to point out that mine are pretty much all bigger than his.
It's okay. I'll go twice.
It's
All right.
okay. It's okay. Don't worry. Everyone's a wiener.
That's right. Wiener takes all. So let's talk about how we can get this game.
Sure. I plan to relaunch the Kickstarter in early next year, probably Q1. So
like in 2 weeks.
No. When I say Q1, that includes March.
All right,
Okay, so I'm thinking it's probably going to be March.
All right.
I have a lot of work to do still to get it out there, get the prototypes created, the extra prototypes created, send them to bloggers and everything. But if you want to be notified when the game is coming out, you can follow our you can follow our Facebook page. I think they have the links in chat. You can also follow me on Kickstarter. If you go to the Kickstarter page, it has my picture in the upper left, and any projects that I launch, you'll get a notification of that. And those are the 2 ways that I can think of right now, other than unless you know me or know.
Do you want them to have your contact information?
I'm fine with anything. If you want to, yeah, sure.
Fruitstrike Games.
I can just give my Gmail. I don't mind. I use it for
okay.
professional everything. Yeah, it's
sure?
fine. Yeah, I use it for everything. I have it already publicly for a mod that I make for Civilization 5. I get
make the mod for Civilization 5?
A mod of Civ 5. We can talk.
Awesome. Yeah, let's talk about that too. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, so my email is just simply, it's my first name, George, my last name, Skleres, @gmail.com.
Skleres, you say it like you have spelled that all your life. So Skleres.
It's
Skleres.
Sorry, I assumed it was on the stream title.
Oh yeah, well there it is too. Still, it needs to be spelled out.
Okay, yes.
All right, so george.skleres at gmail.com.
Yeah, feel free to contact me. And also, I'm happy to, like I said, I'm freelance working as well. So if there's any people who are looking for game designers who do board games. I've done quite a few board games now for companies that are they're one-make board games for internal use only, for use in training programs and things.
Right, that's very smart.
People, when they play games, they get into a different mindset where they'll exhibit behaviors that you're trying to train them with.
Yes, absolutely. People learn by playing.
Yeah.
That's absolutely one of the best things that you can do to train people. So,
so
brilliant concept there as well.
Plugging myself there.
Games. Absolutely, that's what this is for. It's a neighborhood spotlight. This is all about you, George. Tonight is all about you. Yes.
Hey, we got a few questions that can help lead in some of these.
Okay.
And somebody recognizes your Kickstarter from a Twitter page too. Do you have a Twitter?
I do not have a Twitter.
Okay.
But somebody else probably tweeted it.
All right. Okay.
Or
So
said Twittered.
Twittered.
That's Twitter.
All right. User, I didn't get the name. I need to know how your work on League of Legends interface informed his work on this game.
Oh, okay. So my work on League of Legends specifically would not inform something like this. But game design, I mean, learning about game design is critical for anything. This game, admittedly, is a very shallow amount of strategy. I know, shallow. But there's enough strategy here. So the complexity and the depth here was in being able to understand an audience. My audience is not gamers with this game. Gamers enjoy the game, but my audience is ultimately more casual players. And so you can extrapolate a lot of lessons from things like, for example, League of Legends, when it came out, was one of the first MOBAs, and that would need to have the reason why we were successful, one of the reasons why we were successful, is because we were a lot more accessible to the audience. They made a lot of game design decisions that made the game easier to control, easier to understand for the audience without sacrificing the depth that would exist in a MOBA game. And that's a big reason why it became so popular.
Okay.
And so that's one example of a lesson that I've learned from League of Legends that's directly applicable here, is play to your audience and make sure you're designing things that work for your audience and hit those niches the right way.
Excellent answer. Good one. All
right. Next question. All right. Great. This is a fun one. How much Wiener concept art did you go through before settling on the right image?
Not that much, actually. This is real. Like I had to do this with some artists. I had a friend who's an artist. He's also gay, and I asked him, hey, how interested are you in doing this? And he wanted to do it, and I said, okay, so can you draw me a a couple of variations of a hot shirtless guy, and then a hot guy with a shirt and everything. And it's 20 minutes later, he has the most beautiful silhouette in the world put on the cards. But we went through quite a few iterations for the guys because one of the problems is that I wanted to be sure to include a range of skin tones with the guys because, like I said, diversity is really important to me. So you can see that there's guys of every kind of skin tone down here. And so the problem is when you do that and you have something where it's a two-part card thing, I couldn't show the hands because if the hands were one skin tone and the top was another skin tone, it wouldn't work.
So you put them all in gloves.
Right,
Makes
exactly.
Sense. Very funny.
That was a solution there.
Yes.
For the wieners themselves, I have a particularly funny document that was a very real thing that I sent to an artist for paid work called Large Wiener Adjustment Request. And it quite literally was
large wiener adjustment.
This wiener looks like a slug from a distance and it needs to look more like a sausage. Can you make it more rigid and more erect? That was literally what the email was. Because, the game has to be risque if it's going to succeed.
That's true.
So
nobody wants to look at limp slug-like sausages. I'm just saying.
That made the game.
That's funny.
Riot has one of the most diverse employee populations in the industry. Can you tell us how Riot managed to obtain a more diverse group of employees?
Yeah, so this is a topic that Riot considers super seriously. They made it a point to have town halls where anyone in the company was able to participate and hire people whose job was to help promote diversity as well.
Wow.
Now, when we were a growing company, or I said we again, but sure.
It's okay. We were there for 6 years.
I will always be a Rioter, even if I'm not working at Riot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I was there and they were growing, that was one of the growing pains that we had. Because a lot of times there's subconscious bias that people have that they don't realize they have. People who aren't necessarily, like we as humans do a lot of pattern recognitions and we tend to associate with the familiar more than with the different, right?
Absolutely.
And so these kinds of things, even in people who are trying to actively think, like even me, I think about this stuff all the time. I catch myself sometimes making stereotypical judgments and things where, even if I catch myself, I still did it. I'm guilty. I move on because, failure learning.
Yes, absolutely.
But at Riot, they made it a point to be really active, really active about making sure everyone knows this is important to us. And I'm not saying they did a perfect job because they didn't do a perfect job. There were lots of mistakes along the way. There were lots of problems. And the fact that there were problems, I give them huge kudos for trying to fix those problems. And they fixed some of them, and maybe some of them still exist. Maybe other ones have come up. I don't know because I haven't been there for a while.
Right, but what do they do? Like they send out memos once a month, or you said they had the town halls once a month or once every couple of months?
It was
diversity
more
training.
It was more of an as needed type basis, and there was a lot of training. It was more just behavioral training type things, where especially for managers. That they would, we had some management crises sometimes, and that came out in a way that what I mean is there weren't enough managers because the company was growing too fast, and so it was really hard for us to maintain the growth of the player base and scramble to do all of those things while also simultaneously growing the culture of the company into the healthiest thing. So what they would do is when individuals would step up to do certain things, they would provide whatever support they needed. So, for example, I started a couple of different clubs at Riot, but one of them was an LGBTQ lunch, where basically we would meet to just talk about whatever kinds of stuff we wanted to do. Another thing is that they were really active about sending people to conferences to speak about diversity. So you can find a lot of different conferences, like everything from PAX to GDC to other kinds of things where there were rioters there, me included, I did a bunch of them as well, who would talk about diversity and what we're doing in different ways. Now, the number one way that you can help with diversity when you're a game developer is make game content that is diverse.
Yes.
It's really, really easy and low cost to add simple, diverse things to your game.
Yes.
If your game has any form of characters or narrative or anything like that, there's always ways to add diversity. And you know how I said before about you don't just want to do it for the checkbox.
Right.
Sometimes you have to remember also that if you don't do it at all, that's a different checkbox.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So it's not so much that, there's a requirement for we need, a character of race X and a character of gender Y and a character of, orientation Z, whatever.
Really, if you just allow the person to create their own character, so that way they have the choice of making something that is reflective of what they want to look like. And that's all you need to do.
Do empathy training. Absolutely do empathy training for your employees who are creators. That's really
important.
Let's
talk about that. Empathy training.
Yeah. So I mean,
so where would they go to find that sort of thing?
I have
YouTube?
No idea.
Would they contact you? What would they bring you in as a consultant?
I would be happy to help with that.
Okay.
When I was at Riot, it was more of a thing that was done by. We had a pretty thorough HR department in terms, and I say HR, but it's more. I can't remember the term they use right now. I don't know why I'm blanking on it, but it's more about like people. It's like the people department. We want to make people better. We want to help people. We want to do that thing because they don't think of like.
So more like personal development.
Right. Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Yes. Right. And so empathy. I mean, empathy is just being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. When you don't know how to experience what they're experiencing, try your best to think about it.
Yes.
And it's a really difficult skill, and it just takes a lot of practice. And nobody's perfect at it.
Right.
But when the people who are creating content have a high degree of empathy, then it's very easy for them to simply remember that, I should think about, is this cast of characters that I've created going to appeal to a wide, diverse audience?
Right.
Is the cast of characters I created going to, is every player of my game going to find something that they can relate to? Because what we want to do when we play games is relate to it.
Yes.
I can tell you from firsthand experience that the difficulty that I found growing up was, well, not growing up, but also into my college years, was that there were never any gay characters. And I'm not saying, I never wanted there to not be straight characters. It's irrelevant to me whether they're straight characters. And I would hope that there would be some. I wouldn't want it to be all gay characters either. But every time just the tiniest inkling of something that might be a gay character was something that just I instinctively grabbed onto.
Right, because you could see it, you were more sensitive to that.
And I treasured it because it was an experience that I had not had before.
Yes. Yes.
And so a lot of times when people are creators who belong to the mainstream or don't have anything about them that they feel is any kind of minority, and there's nothing wrong with that, obviously, but sometimes it doesn't even enter into their mindset that this is a thing that exists. And so just training your creators to be able to keep that in mind allows them to create more diverse content. We do generally a better job in the game community. I know you might disagree with this, but I think we actually do a better job of promoting diversity in game communities than we do diversity in game content.
I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that.
Even
That's
games,
very true.
Games that have almost no diverse content whatsoever. And I'm talking, it could be an RPG or an MMO or, well, I guess that's the same thing, or any kind of.
Well, those games have, again, when you have that kind of player development where you can create your own character and they give you that range. But if we're talking, you say this, and I will never forget when they came out with Assassin's Creed. Honestly, I'm going to go with the one that was on PlayStation, the Vita. They only released it on the PlayStation Vita because they had a female assassin. I'm trying to remember her name. She was actually mixed. And because she was mixed, and it was a brilliant storyline, and she was mixed, and it was she was French Creole, and it was down in New Orleans. It was a brilliant concept, and they didn't release it in in any kind of mass release. It was only with the PlayStation Vita, and so of course the game wasn't that successful. And I wondered why. Why would you intentionally sabotage such a cool concept? Because I was actually going to, at the time, I was hardcore Xbox and Halo and that sort of thing. I was actually going to go buy the PlayStation for that game, for that version of Assassin's Creed.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And it wasn't there, and I was just very frustrated with it. But that's something that I never forgot. And again, now of course, obviously, Black Flag with pirates, and then of course Connor and Native Americans. That was great and more reflective, but still, that was an instance of that kind of just insensitive. I don't want to call it insensitivity, but more just like being completely blind to it. They had a huge opportunity because they obviously they took the time to develop that game. They took the time to create that game with such a rich story, but then they were afraid of releasing it. It's almost like they spoke to their marketing focus groups or something, and from their initial tests, they just suddenly got scared to release it.
Right.
So that's an example of something that pops into my mind. So
I've seen a couple of, so obviously I didn't
You didn't know about that, right?
So
Exactly.
I haven't worked on it. I have no idea what their reasons are. But some instances of diversity dampening that I've seen in the industry has come from fear. Fear of, if we do this, there's going to be a backlash because we did it wrong. They say, for example, if somebody is afraid to make a character have a certain attribute because they think, if you make character X this race, then people are going to say why about it. Let's say something like, "Oh, why did you do that? That's a stereotype,"
Sure.
or "I shouldn't do it." And so that's something that I think developers really have to get out of their heads. You need to be careful about doing things respectfully. But as long as what you're doing from the inside is respectful and you do have that empathy, you're going to do it right.
Yeah.
And also, no matter how right you do it, some troll is going to lambast you for it.
Yes, that's true. Now, we say this, and yet another example that comes to mind is South Park, Fractured But Whole. Right? I mean, obviously the difficulty of the game goes up when you change the character's race. I don't know if you've seen the video.
Oh, does it really?
Oh, it's hilarious, yes. Yeah, they say
That's
this won't
something
affect combat, but it's absolutely hilarious.
Wow.
Okay, so we've got a question.
We've got a few questions
Yes.
for you. All right. So I'll go in the order. Maybe you can try to narrate this. With your experience with Riot, what was Riot's guidelines for making a good UI?
Okay, so that's a great question. So when I first started, they were in a bit of a pickle in that the UI programmer that they had was no longer there. So I think that the plan at that point when I first started was we need to have anything in the UI change at all. It was not a happy place. But as I said, or let me rephrase it, it was a very happy place because the growth of the company and the player base was so big. Over time, when we started hiring UX designers, it became more of a collaborative team effort where they would form. I was part of two different teams. One was a UI team for the in-game client, in-game UI. So all the stuff you're seeing when you're playing the game. And the other team that I had joined at one point was the team for the outside of game chat client. And so by spinning up an entire team dedicated to this stuff, that's ultimately what led to the UIs getting as many overhauls and revamps as they did. For most of the development cycle in the first couple of years, it was more of a skin of your teeth kind of thing, but I mean, that's how game development is, right? Like, I mean, I think every game developer knows that when you have resources stretched thin, the UI kind of falls back. But as soon as the resources started coming in, hiring people who specialized in it and creating teams that centered on it and whose mission was to make the UI better was an important thing. And also having game designers who were really UI cognizant from the start helped a great deal. All of the game designers that I worked with at the beginning of my stay there they were all very, very cognizant of how UI impacts the game, and so they weren't just tuning numbers and mechanics. They were also thinking about how is the player playing the game and what can we do to make it easier.
All right, excellent answer.
All right.
Great question.
Moving right along. I'd like to know how you write your rules for your games, and how do you know when they are well written?
That's a great question. I do not like writing rules for games, and it's mostly because I don't mind writing the rules, but especially for this game, this game more than any other game that I've made I've had the hardest time writing the rules, and it's because it needs to be a set of rules written for people who don't play games, people who normally don't play games, and this has some mechanics in it that are complex, hardcore gamer mechanics, such as the hidden information element and the timer for the guys to leave the party, how it's only 3 rolls, that I have to give that complexity across to the players without doing it in a way that it's just going to go over their head or numb their brain or whatever.
Right.
So the rules for this game aren't finished yet. I'm still trying to. Now, the thing that advantage that I have for this game and the direction that I'm going is I'm using humor.
Yes.
So as long as I can have humor in the rule set, it will be enjoyable for them to read.
Yes.
It's going to instantly make them want to learn.
Yes.
It's not just flip card X if mechanic Y happens, anything like that. It's going to say something like exactly what I told you.
Yeah.
You get to peek at one card. You can peek at a guy to see if he's easy, or you can peek at a wiener to see if it's worth it. And right there, that is so much innuendo that people who read it, they'll laugh at it and they'll remember it.
Yes.
And if I can make the entire rule set that way, that's how I'm going to go for this game.
That's perfect. All right.
So yeah, it goes back to the point before of know your audience.
Yes.
Play to your audience.
Obviously, you're playing to that audience
All
that
right.
loves sausage.
All right, one more. Stormstrike LLC apparently is working on a board game that could potentially be an app for the same game. So do you have any tips on introducing yourself to publishers?
Tips on do they mean things that I've introduced to publishers? So I have not sought out any publisher relationships. So this is probably, aside from contacting Cards Against Humanity, I'm probably the wrong person to ask for this. But there are a lot of resources online. When I did my research, I'm not going to really be able to remember anything right now off the top of my head, but if you Google things about board game publishers, you'll be able to find a lot of information. Once I finished the Googling, I decided I didn't want to find a publisher, and so I didn't really have any.
Really?
Yeah.
You decided you'd rather self-publish.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm if you're a business person and you really like games and business, please feel free to contact me, because I really need a lot more help with that. I couldn't be far. I'm the stereotypical,
brilliant gamer who came up with a great idea, and then you need the business partner to help you market it.
Just want to do.
You just want to make games.
I want to make games, and I know that you can't do that when you're indie, and I get it. I'm not going to be that artist that.
But this is great though, and everybody gets to see your journey, right? I mean, that's something that's inspiring, it's educational, and that's something that we all need to see it, and it's also empowering. That's a fantastic experience. So thank you very much for sharing this. Do we have any other questions, Brian?
I got them.
Well, I'm going to ask, what's next? You've got Christmas, right?
Yeah.
So that's what is happening this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what's going to happen for Christmas and New Year's? And what are your goals for the next 3 months? Since you say you're going to release this in March.
Sure. So January is going to be the month where I want to get as many prototypes out to bloggers, YouTubers, etc. If you're a person who reviews games and you want a copy, please feel free to contact me.
Mm-hmm.
I almost said combat me. I'm too much of a gamer. It's
Call GTDA members too.
Yes. All right. If it's combat you're looking for, that would be Fruitstrike. But if it's contact, then it's George.Skleres, SKLERES @gmail.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's going to be January. Then just formulating the attack plan from a marketing perspective in February. That's a pretty nebulous cloud for me right now because I still don't know how to do it. It's something that I'm researching as I go. Hopefully I will find the right people to help out with it because I always think that finding someone who can do the right stuff is better than
you learning to do it yourself.
I mean, I love learning. Yeah. I can't do everything, right?
Right.
Well,
you made a great game. This is actually a lot of fun to play. It was a lot of fun to play. And you're obviously a wealth of knowledge, and with your energy, you're a fun person to know and to play with. So I'm looking forward to helping you succeed.
Sweet, thank
you.
And
I want to thank you very much for being a part of the Neighborhood Spotlight. So welcome to the Neighborhood Studio, by the way. We are a teaching and production facility located right here in Norcross, just outside the perimeter, and we would love to be a resource for you. So we help aspiring creatives become working creatives. We are also a production studio. I am very proud of the fact that just today, I can't tell you what video game I recorded in the Apple room, but we were working on a video game that's going to come out soon with some downloadable content. We've recorded movies. I've got students that are booking AT&T spots, McDonald's spots. I mean, we're a working facility here. So if you're curious, find us on neighborhoodstudioatlanta.com. Obviously, check out ggda.org. And of course, don't forget about the merchandise, right? cafepress.com/ggda merch. And I want to thank everybody for watching today. Of course, thank our Patreons again. Let me find their names specifically so I can specifically thank Stephen Coffey, Burton Posey, Lee Friedman, James Simpson, and Trey Carpenter. To become a Patreon yourself, visit patreon.com/GeorgiaGameDevs. Again, cafepress.com/ggda. It makes a great Christmas present. And then you can show off your Christmas presents on January 9th, which is when we're going to have our next GGDA meeting at Georgia State University. Remember, it's a look at how to succeed at game jams, and that needs to be on your New Year's resolution going into 2018 because you want to make more games. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. I'm Bob Carter. This is George Skleres.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Brian Miller, for making this happen. Happy holidays, everybody, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
The first Georgia Esports League Championship was a great success, with 40 competitors from 6 colleges competing for more than $11,000 in scholarships, as well as bragging rights to being the best in the state.